Bonjour French 1, this is your section 1.2 video all about classroom commands and asking about spelling. First thing I want to remind you of is that you only have to write down the words that are actually on the line with the yellow background. The words that are in parentheses there with the green background are optional. They are an explanation of the pronunciation of the actual vocab words. So you don't have to write down the ones in green if you don't want to. Second thing I want to remind you is to get the total vocab experience. Do make sure that besides seeing the word, writing it down, that after you hear it, that you also repeat after me and practice saying the word. Now, some of these phrases are things that you won't have to say very often, but saying them now helps you remember them for later, and sometimes you can end up using part of one of the phrases in a different way later on in the year. So the first thing we are going to go through are the commands that a teacher, probably me, will most likely be giving you in class. These are the kinds of things that you'll need to be able to hear and follow directions in class. So we'll start with the words for sit down, which are asseyez-vous. The words for stand up, levez-vous. The words for be quiet or silence is silence. Pay attention is faites attention. The words for listen and repeat after me. This is a longer phrase. Écoutez et répétez après moi. If I want you to take something out, now the reason why a sheet of paper is underlined is because you don't always have to say take out a sheet of paper. You can replace sheet of paper with something like a book or something else that would make sense. I'm just using sheet of paper for this example. The way you would say take out a sheet of paper is prenez une feuille de papier. To say go somewhere to the blackboard for this example, you would say allez au tableau. If I want you to look at something, in this case the map, I will say regardez la carte. If I need to tell you to go back to your seats or return to your seats, I'll say retournez à vos places. If I ask you to open your books to a particular page number, it will sound like ouvrez vos livres à la page. And of course, don't forget that I'll actually fill in a number there. And then close something, whether it be your book or in this case, in this example, your notebooks, is fermez vos cahiers. And what we have on this next page here are phrases that you might need to say to me in class to either ask questions or clarify. First, we have the titles. Obviously, you won't be using monsieur with me, but either way, if you are addressing a male teacher, you say monsieur. A female, usually married or older teacher is madame. And a miss would be somebody who's a younger woman or somebody who's unmarried, and that in French is mademoiselle. After you address your teacher, you might need to explain that you don't understand something. The way you say that in French is je ne comprends pas. Perhaps you'll need to ask me to repeat something. In that case, you'll say répétez, s'il vous plaît. And then if you know a word in English and you want to know how to say it in French, and for whatever reason you couldn't be bothered to get a dictionary, if you want to ask how you say something in French, like for example, how do you say cat in French? You would ask, comment dit-on cat en français? And on the flip side, if you see something and you don't know what it means in English, so you see a French word that you're unfamiliar with and you need to know what it means in English, in this case I'll use the example of ordinateur, which we know is computer, but if you wanted to ask what does ordinateur mean, as in I see the French word and I don't know what it means, you would ask, qu'est-ce que ça veut dire ordinateur? So on the back of your paper, you have some information about asking how stuff is spelled. This does not come up very often at all, particularly exchanging of email addresses. But because your book makes you aware of it, I figured we'd go ahead and float it out there and see what sticks. But this is not one of the more important sections here, if we're going to be honest. If you want to ask how something is written, you would ask, comment ça s'écrit? And then you would actually fill in the word for what you wanted to know how it was written. A different way to ask would be to ask, how do you spell? So for example, if you wanted to say, how do you spell ordinateur, which is the word for computer, you would ask, comment tu appelles ordinateur? And then when somebody goes to answer, they'll answer by saying, ça s'écrit, and they'll actually spell out the word for you. For exchanging email addresses, if you want to ask, what is your email address? Quelle est ton adresse email? And just so that you're aware, whenever somebody wants to say it's, they will say c'est. And then the at sign is arrobase. And instead of saying dot, they'll say point. So just a few slight differences from English. Now, one of the things that comes up in the spelling are the accent marks. I have a lot of students ask if it's important that they write in the accent marks, and the answer is yes. It's part of the spelling of a word. It can actually change the entire word altogether and the meaning and the pronunciation if you do the incorrect accent mark or if you leave your accent marks off altogether. And I can give you a really great example of that in class if you'd like to ask me in person. But the bottom line is they are important because they are part of the spelling. It changes the pronunciation of the word, and because it's spelled different and pronounced different, it's actually an entirely different word if it has different accent marks. Now what we're showing you here are the actual names of the accent marks. It's fun to know, but not required. Just so you know, there are different accent marks. One of them goes this way, as in up and to the right. That's called an accent aigu. The one that goes down and to the right is an accent grave. The one that looks like a little house is called an accent circonflexe. The one that hangs off the letter C that almost looks like a number 5 is called a cédille. And the one that's 2 dots that you actually sometimes see us use in the English language is called a tréma. Now if you want to, you can go ahead and read about how they affect their pronunciation, because it's good to know. It'll help you pronounce things easier and more accurately right off the bat whenever you've never seen a word before. But honestly, the more you practice just reading random words or practice learning vocabulary, you'll probably pick up how it affects the pronunciation along the way. But if you want the full story, it's right there on your paper for you to read.